Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sportuccino. It is Thursday, the 9th of February 2017. I'm Richard Parr. So great to have you with us today on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Periscope. Yes, every single weekday morning we discuss and digest some of the biggest stories in world sport. And today we've got a real focus on rugby, both the Rugby Six Nations matches this weekend, including this crucial tie between Wales and England. And we'll also have a preview ahead of the new Super League season, which starts later on Thursday. So much to cover, but let's begin the day with our morning sports headlines. Alaves will face Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final after they beat Celta Vigo 1-0. Premier League champions Leicester are through to the FA Cup fifth round after they beat Derby 3-1 after extra time. Maria Sharapova has been offered a wild card for the Madrid Open when her doping ban ends. And the Golden State Warriors beat the Chicago Bulls 123-92 in the NBA. So how do you start your day? I start mine with an Americano black coffee, and I have it out of my Sportuccino mug. And of course, you can get yourself a Sportuccino mug. All you've got to do is go to sportuccino.com/merchandise. Not only will you look cool in your new mug, but you'll also be helping support our show, and I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. All right, so it's Alaves against Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final. Barcelona are trying to appeal that sending off Luis Suarez got in their game against Atletico on Tuesday, in fact. And of course, yesterday on Wednesday, Alaves beat Celta Vigo 1-0 through to the final for the very first time. Of course, they had that classic game against Liverpool back in the early 2000s. I think that was the UEFA Cup back then, which Liverpool won. I think it was 5-4. Absolutely cracking game. Could they finally get a trophy? We will see in that final. And is there a little bit of pressure coming off Claudio Ranieri now after his team Leicester City beat Derby? They needed extra time to do it. It was pretty much a second string team he put out. He did bring on some of the big guns towards the end, including Morris and Slimani, but it was enough to see them through. Does that relieve some of the pressure? I'd love to get your thoughts on the Facebook page and on the Periscope page. Please get involved in the conversation. And we mentioned Slimani there. He's been a striker who's done okay, but he's not one of the elite level strikers, and that is what we were talking about on our poll yesterday on the Twitter page at Sportuccino. Let's have a look at what was there. So we were asking, who is the best striker in the Premier League? Is it Aguero, Costa, Ibrahimovic, or Harry Kane? A few of you were saying, what about Daniel Sturridge? Or what about Jermaine Defoe? I was going to say Willem Dafoe there. Jermaine Defoe. I don't know why I had Willem Dafoe. Maybe I'm thinking about Spider-Man. Who knows? But we had Aguero, Costa, and Ibrahimovic joint there, 29% each. You couldn't decide who was the best striker, whether it was Aguero, Costa, Ibrahimovic, but you decided it's not Harry Kane. Very interesting there. Maybe we should do that poll again, make it last a little bit longer than one day so we can get a final answer. Of course, some of you could say maybe it's Gabriel Jesus as he's keeping Aguero out of the side. That's all to be discussed. All right, let's have a look at today's poll. And we are moving on to rugby. We are talking about the Six Nations on today's Sportuccino. So very simple poll today. We're asking who will win on Saturday in the Six Nations between Wales and England at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium. Will it be Wales? Will it be England? Or will it be a draw? I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Let's have a quick look at what is on our Instagram page today. Italy joined the Six Nations in 2000. Yes, it is. Italy joining the Six Nations in 2000 when it changed from the Five Nations to the Six Nations. So lots to discuss. It was a huge weekend last weekend when it started the Six Nations. We've got another round coming up now, and I'm delighted to say we're going to get some top analysis from Chris Egerton, the sports journalist and communications manager, joining us live now on Skype. Chris, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Richard. Hope the signal's okay from rural Leicestershire, but yes, all is good, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. We have guests from around the world, and sometimes we can get amazing signal from places such as Uganda and Singapore and places which you don't think are very good. But then when it's up the road in Leicestershire, sometimes it can be a little bit dodgy, but these things happen. But we'll get through it. And of course, we've got this huge rugby game this Saturday at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium, England versus Wales. Now, there's a lot of criticism over England's performance against France, particularly in the first half, but they still won. Now, rewind to the pre-Eddie Jones era. A win over France would just be an amazing result for England. We wouldn't care about the performance. Are the expectation levels a bit too high right now?
Well, no, I don't think they are too high, Richard. You have to look at the conditions to back that up. And basically, England have the biggest playing base of any rugby union playing country in the world, and by some distance as well. I'm looking at the figures right now, and all of 4 years ago, they had 166,000 men of 18 years plus playing rugby union at a decent level. France were next, South Africa are behind them, but something like 50% higher than France. You then look at what England are doing with their talent, and they've reached 5 of the last 6, I think it is, under 20 World Championship finals. So they're getting something right, and even if they can't quite compete yet on a consistent level with the Southern Hemisphere, they are certainly producing and fine-tuning their talent. Now, the only question is, can they deliver under real pressure? 15 wins on the bounce now under Eddie Jones. This is the acid test, because although England have got a relatively good record in Cardiff over the last few years, Wales against England is always the fixture in the Six Nations that stands out off the calendar. And I think we're in for a fascinating game, in particular because Wales have the advantage in the area that England struggled in against France most regularly, and that's the back row. You get Warburton, who was fantastic for Wales against Italy last weekend. He's released from the captaincy from all the strains that go from there. They've had all sorts of fun, England, against Justin Tipperick as well. Those two working together really give England problems, and that was the area that they struggled with in particular against France. So fascinating contest, all sorts of mind games being played already, and I can't wait till about 5 o'clock on Saturday night already, and we're only Thursday morning.
Yeah, we had the sports historian Phil Barker on the show on Monday, and he agrees with you. He called it the occasion of the year when it comes to sports, Wales versus England, and I know it's really spoken a lot about in Cardiff and in all of Wales and in England, of course. Everyone's looking forward to it. Now, you mentioned some of the key positions for Wales. There are injury concerns over Dan Biggar and George North. North, in my opinion, is one of the best players in the world. They'll announce their team at 14 GMT. If those two don't make it, how much of a loss could they be for Wales?
Well, let's take them individually. I agree with you. George North is a world-class talent. It'd be fabulous to see him for the Lions this summer against New Zealand, and he'll be needed against New Zealand. And he is a loss. You're probably looking at someone like Alex Cuthbert to replace him. Terrific finisher, but the home crowd have been on his back in recent internationals, and also in his time for his club side, Cardiff Blues. So see how that one develops. They're really missing Alan Amos in terms of a backup player behind North. But I think in some ways the fly half debate has been running a little bit in Wales over the last 4 or 5 months ago. A lad called Sam Davis, who's a very different type of player from Dan Biggar. Dan Biggar is your steady Eddie fly half, very good with the tactical kicking, terrific with the boot as well. Davis, well, he's a runner, and he showed in the last 20 minutes or so against Italy just what he can do. Now, Rob Howley, the head coach who's standing in for Warren Gatland, who's away with the Lions at the moment, he's trying to just introduce a little bit more flair into the Wales side, not rely so much on the power game that Warren Gatland has used to great effect over the last 10 years or so. If he can do that, Sam Davis would seem like the more ideal component to be able to play that game. So it could be a very interesting game plan from Wales. Remember, there's no Jamie Roberts in the starting 15 either. Big, powerful inside centre. Again, someone who could feature for the Lions potentially if that's the way Gatland wants to go. But with Davis in there at 10, gives England something to think about. And I'm sure in his very thorough approach to preparation for games, Eddie Jones will have on his mind the thought that Sam Davis might just show up for Wales on Saturday night. But well, we'll see how England take it. But I'm not sure that Bigham may be all that much of a loss. George North certainly will be.
So what does your head tell you, Chris? Who's going to win on Saturday?
Well, given that I have Welsh relatives, my head and heart tell me two different things. The head suggests that this might be quite close, and it generally is. And when England lose in Cardiff, which doesn't happen all that often, I think they've lost. They've won 2 out of the last 3. But when they lose in Cardiff, they get hammered. 30 points to 3 is certainly stuck in my gullet over the last few years, and that was in 2013. Head says it. Wales really fancy this one and are really building up to this one. There's a lot of talk in the valleys at the moment, but there always is about this game. So the head tells me that Wales will give England a concert, but I would expect England to just nip home because they found the way to win in the last 20 minutes. They did it against France. Frankly, they deserved nothing whatsoever from the contest at Twickenham last weekend, but they found a way to win with the deep bench. And I wonder, given Wales' continued problems in depth, whether that's going to be a significant factor this Saturday night. Head says England by a few. Heart says England by a lot. Let's put it like that.
We'll have to wait and see. Of course, last week there was a great win for Scotland over Ireland at Murrayfield. This time they head to Paris to face a France team which they haven't beaten in Paris since 1999. They did, of course, beat them last year at home. Could we see them end that long record, do you think, Chris?
I have a feeling they may struggle, but a few things would surprise me this Six Nations, because Scotland certainly turned the form books up by beating Ireland in that opener to the Six Nations Championship. I just think the biggest surprise actually of the whole weekend was how good France were at Twickenham. That was the best French side we've seen by some considerable time. Guy Novas has really shaken things up. They're playing with great power and no little skill this time. Louis Picamoles is a fantastic number 8. And the whole of the French club game is based on power. Now, will Scotland have the pace and the wit to hang in there until the last 10 minutes, when I suspect they will finish a lot more strongly? We've seen already during the European Champions Cup, Glasgow qualifying for only the second time to reach the quarterfinals, doing with a terrific offloading game, invention, wit, pace for the likes of Stuart Hogg and also Tommy Seymour on the wing. I wouldn't rule them out, but I do think the French are going to have just too much power, and I'd worry that they're going to blow them away early on. But I hope not, because Scotland could well be the surprise packet this year from the home nation's point of view.
Well, Brian Sharkey's getting involved on the Facebook page, very simply just with the Irish flag there. They of course, are facing Italy. They lost that game against Scotland last week. Do you think they will have fixed some of the problems they had last week? And are we expecting a pretty easy win for them, do you think?
It's a real frustration for world rugby, actually, that Italy aren't quite at the same level as the Six Nations Championship. I think they will get there. There's a lot of talk at the moment about Georgia potentially replacing Italy, or some form of relegation game between the bottom side in the Six Nations and the top side of the Rugby Europe Championship, and that essentially would be Italy-Georgia. In fact, Georgia ranked above Italy in the IRB World Rankings.
Albeit,
so
Chris,
I would
Chris,
yes.
albeit that's very easy for everyone to say. replace Italy with Georgia. But what happens that one year when a team like England or France or one of the big players was to finish bottom? There'd be uproar. It'd be like when England finished bottom in the Eurovision Song Contest. They said, oh, actually, they put up too much money. We can't relegate them. Wouldn't that happen?
I think I think they'd find some way of trying to sort that. I think it's a more fundamental problem than that. You look at World Rugby, and it's only got 9, 10, maybe 12 leading nations in the world. There isn't enough capacity to be able to drop Italy like a stone and treat them like a tier 2 nation. There's been so much investment gone in over nearly 20 years now. They joined the Six Nations, in 99, 2000 or so. We can't afford to do that now. We have to help Italy go through. And given Conor O'Shea's record of bringing young players through at Harlequins, I can't think of a better man in place of Italy right now. I know we're veering away from Ireland there in a sense. It's also his recruitment. He's brought through development players, development coaches, I should say, from the Irish Rugby Union that are there essentially to get the depth that Italy have always struggled. Now, this coming weekend, it's probably a little bit early for that to happen, and we're probably talking 2, 3 Six Nations before Italy can compete. I would expect Italy to do what they normally do, which is compete manfully for about an hour or so, and then in the last 15 minutes, the better skills and the better depth of more established nations will come through. Ireland will certainly have something to improve. It was very difficult to put what went wrong at Murrayfield last weekend, and I can't work that one out. It just seems that was one of those off days, but then it was always billed as a bit of a banana skin. Did Sexton being absent with injury get in the way? Possibly, although Paddy Jackson was terrific when he came on. So it's just one of those things. I think Ireland, if they can hang on and if they can get to the final game against England in Dublin, remember, without having lost any further games, and there's every chance that might happen, that still sets up a bit of a decider in the final weekend. So I'm not worried about Ireland long term at all. I think they're a class act. Joe Schmidt is the best coach in World Rugby right now, and they'll give England a right old game. Whether they're quite good enough to beat England in that final round, I'm not sure. We'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, Italy by 25 points or so, I'd say, this weekend.
Yeah, so certainly an intriguing Six Nations this year. Let's move on to Super Rugby, because I know that's something you know about. Super League, in fact, not Super Rugby, that's the Southern Hemisphere sport, but Super League.
You had me worried there for a second.
I was just going to throw some questions about the Stormers at you and things like that, just to keep you on your toes. Super League. Super League season starts. What do we expect from this new season?
Well, it's in a funny place at the moment, Rugby League in the UK right now, because there are... It hasn't been a Super League side that's dominated the winter headlines. It's been the fate of the Bradford Bulls going into not just administration but liquidation this summer, and still being able to compete at the same level in the championship that it was prior to that. It's a World Cup year, of course. At the end of the summer, English players will head over to Australia and New Zealand for the World Cup. But you just feel that Rugby League is struggling right now. There's a great tweet the other day from former Union and League Australian fullback Phil Gould, who essentially made the point that English Rugby League has lost its identity over the last 30 years, that it's still trying to play like Australia. And where is that going? The gap to the Kangaroos is still there, and it's the domestic competition in which you need to build that squad. And the problem is sheer economics. The Australian dollar is much stronger now than it used to be, say, 3 or 4 years ago compared to sterling. And that means the attractions of the NRL are even more evident. There's a greater intensity about the rugby. State of origin, obviously, has always been a level above, frankly, anything played in the NRL or indeed Super League. So there's a credibility question, you have to say, with Super League. Wigan won again, of course, last season. Will anybody stop them this year? But I'm looking for the young British talent to come through this summer, and then will England be given the chance to compete by the Super League clubs. You already had a row over the winter about a training camp that the RFL wanted in a place you know quite well, Abu Dhabi, just a few weeks, so that that could take place. They could get the players away and start building a bit of a club style culture. But the clubs said no; they wanted their players in pre-season. So yeah, there's a lot of political issues around rugby league right now, and I've never known a sport as keen to indulge in a gimmick as possible. So just below Super League, we have Toronto Wolfpack. Yes, you heard that right. Toronto Wolfpack competing in League One and competing on a home and away basis with a trip to London first up at the start of March against London Scholars. It seems like rugby league needs to deal with a whole set of questions right now, and I'm not really sure at all, Richard, whether they've got the answers right now.
You mentioned about gimmicks. I would say that the Scottish League very often the Scottish Football Association very often have their own gimmicks to try and get people through the gates, but whether it's number one or not, and please, Scottish football fans, don't send me any hate mail, it's just an observation. I want to get your prediction quickly, Chris, on tonight's game, St Helens versus Leeds.
Well, to me, this is still one of the great contests of rugby league. It always brings to mind some of the great players, and Kieran Cunningham, of course, one of the top names of St Helens' recent history, playing on obviously as one of the coaches. For Leeds, I've got so much time for the head coach at Leeds, who I've interviewed an awful lot of time. I'm struggling to remember his name. It's completely gone from my head. But there's one player for Leeds who and Leeds cannot be any worse than they were last season. And it'd be fascinating to see how the Rhinos continue. Brett Ferris, he's not going to be around for this particular campaign, or this particular contest. So, excuse me, big day for him. When he gets out onto the field, I think he'll be a key player for Leeds this season. St Helens probably something to prove as well. Look, they hate. Everybody talks about the battle with Wigan and the rivalry with Wigan, and it's one of the great rivalries in world sport. The Easter meeting between those two teams, but they saw Warrington get to the grand final. That doesn't happen at all. So Wigan and Warrington ahead of St Helens right now. Kieran Cunningham will have a point to prove this season, and no Matty Smith for them as well, because of course he broke his leg in pre-season. So I think there's questions about St Helens, and I cannot believe that the Rhinos will be any worse than they were in 2016.
We'll have to wait and see. Chris, it's been so good to talk to you this morning. Just before you go, quickly tell us how we can follow you and learn your great knowledge on social media, please.
I'm on Twitter at Egerton Sport, Egerton Sport. Rugby union and rugby league all covered. Also as well, basketball as well. Doing some little work for the Great Britain basketball team at the moment, and I hope that after a £1 million funding from Sport England that's just come our way this week, that we can take a team to Istanbul and really take things on and take on the elite of Europe and get some credit. There's an awful lot of bad things that are written about basketball in Great Britain. An awful lot of cynicism around the game, and people are sometimes a little bit quick to have a go. But there is talent, and if as a governing body we can get things right and get things moving in the right direction, then you will see Great Britain rise up the rankings rather quickly. So busy weekend, and I'll be at Leicester Gloucester in the Premiership this weekend. So frustrating now. I'll have to take my phone to watch the England Wales game while I'm on air. But yeah, all good fun and lots going on. So no, thanks for the chance to talk Six Nations and Super League with you, Richard.
It's been great to have you on the show, Chris. We've really appreciated your knowledge this morning. Chris Egerton, sports journalist and communications manager. Thank you so much for being on Sportuccino.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for the chance.
Great to speak to Chris there on Sportuccino. And yesterday we had the chance to look at technology and apps in particular. And we were talking about the Yellow Tap tennis app with their founder, Sean Ridley. Let's have a little look at what that's all about.
Previously on Sportuccino.
Yellow Tap Tennis is an app aimed at club players. It's born out of my personal desire to have my own match stats when I come off court after a game, and I didn't feel there was anything particularly adequate or user-friendly out there. So born out of a hobby essentially, and my love for the Pro Tour and all the stats that come from that game, I thought it's time that we have something accessible on court here at Preston, Brighton, at your local club and wherever you play. And here we are, just starting out.
Also in that chat, Sean was telling me how he still plays tennis in the freezing cold. He's a lot braver than I am, but I need to get back to the gym, and that's related to today's goal of the day, which of course we do on Snapchat at Sportuccino every single weekday morning. Have a look. It's been a busy week since I've returned back from South Africa. Lots of emails, lots of planning, lots of events to all get ready. And I'll be honest, I've been very bad with getting into the gym. So that is today's goal of the day. Having finally been able to get a nice early night's rest and sleep, I'm now got the energy to hit the gym today. So that is my goal of the day, just get into the gym. I've set my goal of the day. It's now time for you to set yours. It's now time for our travel tip, and it's going to be related to the Six Nations in some way. And it's actually to devote your travel to a sporting event. Now, I've done it before by going to see WrestleMania before. Let's not get into the debate about whether wrestling's a sport or not. But I think it's really good to plan a trip around a sporting event. I know a lot of you football fans will do it if your team gets into Europe. A good friend of mine always goes to see Spurs when they're in the Champions League or the Europa League now. Sorry about that, Spurs fans. And, you know, with the Six Nations, you've got great opportunities to go to Rome to see Italy play, maybe pop over to Ireland to see Dublin, or even if you're just in a city, you should go and enjoy a sporting event. I had the pleasure of doing that while in Cape Town, going to see the South Africa versus Sri Lanka T20 cricket match. Go and give yourself a chance to enjoy a sporting event, because it very often can define the culture of a city. For example, I went to see Major League Baseball, the New York Yankees, in New York, of course, and the way the city revolves around the baseball is incredible. The way that football really dominates the city of Madrid. So really get involved in the culture by going to see a sporting event. That is today's travel tip. Alright, we've reached the end of another Sportuccino. Just want to tell you that Juventus are now 7 points clear at the top of Italy's Serie A after they beat Crotone. 7 points clear of Roma. Of course, Roma beat Fiorentina the day before. Is it a one-horse race in Italy? Would love to get your thoughts on all of that. Alright, just before we go, let's get a quick reminder of today's sports headlines. Alaves will face Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final after they beat Celta Vigo 1-0. Premier League champions Leicester are through to the FA Cup 5th round after they beat Derby 3-1 after extra time. Maria Sharapova has been offered a wild card for the Madrid Open when her doping ban ends. And the Golden State Warriors beat the Chicago Bulls 123-92 in the NBA. Thanks so much for watching Sportuccino today. Please like the Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really matters a lot to us. Thanks to Chris Egerton for being on the show, talking all things rugby and Super League in particular. On tomorrow's show, we will look ahead to another busy weekend in the English Premier League, including Liverpool versus Tottenham. That could be a very important game for both sides. if they want to be in the Champions League, and potentially Spurs being involved in the title race. Could it really end their challenge? Could that help Chelsea even more? We'll discuss all of that on tomorrow's show. Plus, I'll also preview the next WWE pay-per-view, Elimination Chamber. Looking forward to all of that. Of course, we will be live on Facebook, YouTube, and on Periscope from 8 GMT. I look forward to you joining me. I'll see you then. Goodbye.